He's going to be busy now. He always comes on 2 or 3 times during the postseason early and then before the finals. So we'll get PJ on later on here this process as well. But our good buddy is Jeff Van Gundy. He'll be busy all weekend. I'm sure he's doing both 3:30 games, flying West Coast to East Coast. But he says hello. Jeff, always a pleasure. How are you today, pal? Okay?
Doing fine, Chris. How are you?
Okay, I spoke to somebody who would know, and they have said you have been an absolute peach, and you've really gotten into coaching this Junior USA team. You want to go into that? I'm happy to see it. Give me your thoughts on the process for you. Have you enjoyed it?
I have. It's USA basketball. We're using G League players to try to get qualified for the World Cup, and which, if you don't qualify for the World Cup, you can't qualify for the Olympics. So what these G League guys are doing to sacrifice their time and energy when they know they won't get rewarded by getting a spot on the roster, it's been impressive. I've really come to grow and admire and respect the G Leaguers that I've dealt with. You know, we've started this past summer. We played a tournament this summer, then we played in both November and February, play again in June right after the draft. In Mexico and Cuba, and then we'd have 6 more games after that to try to get qualified. And we're not definitely going to get qualified because only 3 teams from this group get qualified, and there are a lot of really good teams.
Wow, so you've enjoyed it. When you play a tournament, how many games, Jeff? You're talking about what, 6 to 8 games?
Well, we played 5 this summer, and then you play. Like in each window, November, February, which we just did, you play 2 at a time, same in June, and then in September, November, and next February. And out of those 12 games, the top 3 records go. And a lot of good teams, Argentina, Uruguay, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and ourselves would probably be the top 5 teams. So 2 of those good teams aren't going. And, those teams get to use their best players, and, we don't. And so it's a challenge. And, Greg Popovich and Jerry Colangelo asked me to do it. And it's really been, Chris, one of the great things I've ever experienced in coaching because, representing your country is special, and doing it with the G League players is really special.
All right, what have you learned most about the G League guys? Is it opportunity, size, they're sort of tweeners? Is it just the idea that they've been unlucky, not getting on the right team? You've been surprised by the talent level of the G League players that you've coached here?
I think the difference is a little smaller, right, than maybe you would like at some positions, and then opportunity. You see, and a lot of our G League guys have gotten called up, and we've been really fortunate. A lot of our guys have gotten called up and actually have gotten minutes. We had John Stockton's son David on our last team. He's up with Utah now. Travis Ware's with the Lakers. Larry Drew was with Philly and New Orleans. And so we've had a number of guys who've gotten called up, but it's hard because there's so few spots. A lot of the guys in the last 5 NBA spots on each roster and the top 3 or 4 players on a G League roster, a lot of them are interchangeable. So it comes down to one team liking you and giving you a chance. And then you got to play well and you got to have the right attitude. And to me, Chris, the hardest thing is to stay upbeat and positive because the lifestyle differences between the G League and the NBA are night and day. The pay is extraordinarily low in the G League, which they have to work to try to make it a reasonable salary. The highest G League salary, I think, is $25,000. So I just really admire these guys' grit and perseverance in chasing this goal that they've had to either get back into the NBA or get their first opportunity.
Wow, how about that? So it gives you a little rundown on Jeff. All right, let's go through the postseason here, Jeff. Let's go through big pictures first. Should I be very concerned about the chemistry and about the sort of health issues that plague the Warriors, or are they going to turn on like a water faucet come Saturday afternoon?
I think they got a great draw in the first round as Curry rehabs, because the Spurs, they've had a great year, and they play as good a defense as anybody in the league. And you know they're going to give a great effort. But they just don't have, with Leonard out, they just don't have a way to score enough points against an engaged Warrior team. But I think it's going to be a tough series. I think it'll be like 4-2, 4-1, but hard-fought games. But I just don't see how San Antonio has enough. So I think they get through the first round, and then they have the better end of the second round with Portland and New Orleans instead of that Utah-Oklahoma City dynamic that Houston would face in the second round. So I think the bracket broke exceptionally well for the Warriors. And the true finals, Chris, to me, comes down to the Western Conference Finals. Houston, Golden State. Who wins that wins the whole thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You expect Curry to miss this whole first round, and when he comes back to be healthy, what's your gut here on Curry's knee? What do you tell me? What can you tell me?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hopeful for him, but certainly rhythm plays a part in it. But by the Western Conference Finals, I think he should be back to playing really good basketball, and they're going to need him to do it because I really think Houston is the favorite. I think they have a tremendous roster, great defensive versatility, health advantage, and also a hunger advantage.
Well,
so I think it's Houston's to lose.
Wow, how about that? Now, I've read those quotes from you, and I've seen that. Now, I'll play devil's advocate. Houston last year collapsed against the Spurs. You know, you and I have had fun with Harden as far as I got to see him in a real big spot. How about the person who says, you know what, let me see Houston, on D'Antoni with his style, let me see Houston. Series on the line, big spot. Let me see them get gritty defensively. Let me see them, play that 89-88 game that they're going to have to probably play sooner or later. I just wonder when the going gets tough if their grittiness will suffice. You seem to think of this year it will?
Well, I think the same questions came up about Golden State. Let me see if they can get gritty enough. Let me see if three-point shooting can carry a team. And they've proven that it can. So I thought Daryl Morey, the general manager of the Rockets, did a great job in improving their defensive versatility with Paul, Tucker, and Ma Bute. They're much more equipped to guard the elite offensive teams like Golden State. I think Chris Paul gives them the additional playmaker that they need, so they're not as reliant on Harden on every possession. And so I just think they have a tremendous roster, very well coached, and I do believe they have this health hunger advantage that Golden State, hey, listen, it's hard. It's hard to stay on edge for 4 years. I think Golden State's a dynasty. I just don't think they get it done this year.
Wow, I'm fascinated by that. So even if Golden State, from a talent perspective, if Curry's healthy, Houston cannot match the Warrior Big Four for talent, can they, Jeff?
People talk about these teams like, Houston's got two guys that are elite and Golden State's got four. I look at it different. I think when you look at Houston, I think Eric Gordon is elite in his role. Absolutely elite. If you sleep on him, he can get 25 easily in a playoff game. I think P.J. Tucker in his role is elite. I think Clint Capella is elite in his role. So I don't look at it like the Warriors have a talent advantage over Houston. I think they're both have these elite rosters that are superior to every other team in this league, and that's why it's going to come down to those two. And they do it in different ways offensively, but they're both absolute offensive juggernauts.
All right, we'll get back to the West in a sec. Do you think Toronto is any better equipped this year than they have been in the past. 59 regular season wins, the whole bit. Cleveland second round. You have more confidence in Toronto this year than you have in the past to say get out of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I think they will get out, but I think, as you mentioned, they're going to be challenged. I think their first round matchup is so hard in Washington. You know, Washington's schizophrenic. You don't know what you're going to get from them individually or collectively, but they certainly have the talent to win a 7-game series against anybody in the East, and Toronto included. So I think they have a very tough first round. Obviously, they would have to slay the dragon of LeBron James in the second round if both get through. And then, you know, in the final round, listen, they could be playing either Philly or Milwaukee for that matter. I think it'll be one of those two teams. And, you know, so the Eastern Conference, they'll have a huge experience advantage. So it's going to be interesting and fascinating.
So you think Toronto, despite the fact they have never done a great job against the Cavs, if they play Cleveland, you think this year Toronto is much better equipped to beat them in a 7-game series?
Well, I think actually it's more that I think Cleveland is less capable. I don't think necessarily Toronto has improved that much. I thought they were very good in years past. I think their depth, their second unit is tremendous. But I think it's more so that Cleveland's not as good. James has been obviously fabulous, but I just don't think they're as talented as they have been in the past. And the missing ingredient of that second guy like Kyrie Irving to create offense against the best defenses is not there.
Yeah, big factor. All right, how good is Philadelphia?
Oh, they're great. You don't win 16 games in a row if you're not great. And the brackets have broken for them in that they have a tough first round opponent in Miami that no one's talking about. I would not be surprised to see Miami win game 1 in Philadelphia. I have that much respect for their toughness and their tenacity and their coaching that it's not going to be a walkover, but I think eventually Philly figures it out and wins. And then they're either playing Milwaukee with home court advantage or they're going to a injured Boston team where they have a great talent advantage. And I would expect them to win that. So I think they're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'd be more surprised if Philly's not there than Toronto not being there.
Really? Wow. So you think Philadelphia, because of the Celtics in the second round, will have a little easier run than Toronto do getting by Cleveland? Is Cleveland, did this trade really help? Have they gotten a little better? I mean, they did trail by 30 the other day to Philadelphia in an important game. Do you have any? Do you think that Cleveland is certainly capable of putting together a good postseason run without Irving? Let me get a little thumbnail on the Cavaliers. What do you see with them?
Well, I think they're an excellent offensive team and have the capabilities of being devastating on offense with James orchestrating the amount of shooting they have around them. I think the trade were all good. It gave them new life, it gave them hope, but they just don't guard anybody. They're just like Minnesota. Minnesota is a bad defensive team. So is Cleveland. And I just don't see when they match up against Toronto, and Toronto's such a good defensive team, how they hold up in a 7-game series when you don't guard.
Wow. So you think Cleveland's in some trouble here. Now, I was hopeful that Minnesota would win last night because I thought they would be a better matchup for Houston than, say, San Antonio would have been. Thibodeau's a great defense. He was your assistant, so you know. He was a great assistant. He's a great defensive coach. Now, they locked Denver up pretty well last night, late in the game and in overtime. Now, Denver scores 106 points. Denver can do that. So I'm a little surprised to hear you tell me right now that Minnesota is a bad defensive team, which does not bode well against the Rockets, who can score against anybody. So let me hear some things about the T-Wolves for a sec.
Well, what Minnesota is, and you're right about Tom Thibodeau. He's a great, great basketball coach, elite. And they are a tremendous offensive team. They are hard to guard. And defensively, their young players, most notably Wiggins and Towns, whether they can't or won't guard on a nightly basis, has led them to be like in the bottom 5 in defense. And so when you're playing such an elite team offensively in Houston, you have to have an ability. You're not going to stop them, but you've got to be able to slow them down. And I think what I think is going to happen in the first round, I think Minnesota will play well. I think it's going to be a hard-fought sweep. I just don't see Minnesota having enough to beat Houston, but I do think they'll play hard. I think they'll play well, but ultimately I think they'll get swept.
Wow. All right, out of the 4 teams in the West in the 2 series that I think we all like, you could put an umbrella around those 4 teams. Who knows who's better, matchups, you know better than me. I think maybe you got 2 7-game series. I think that's interesting there too. Maybe Portland wins in 6, but I think those are 2 good series. Who is the most dangerous? I guess is it OKC because of Westbrook and George? In your eyes, who is the most dangerous of those 4 teams for Golden State and Houston if they come out of that first round?
Well, I don't think anybody's dangerous on the side of Golden State to beat Golden State. I think you'd have to say for Houston, Oklahoma City with Westbrook, and if Paul George has a great 2 weeks, if those 2 guys have a great 2 weeks, even though they have, average talent around them, that they could carry, you could see how they could win on somebody else's court, no matter who they play. So I would say Oklahoma City is the danger to Houston. I think Houston, obviously got a very hot team in Utah, and they've got a star-driven team in Oklahoma City that happens to fall into their bracket. They got no breaks how those brackets broke, but ultimately I think it might help prepare them and steel themselves a little bit for, to me, what's inevitable, which is their matchup against Golden State.
All right, who wins the Portland-New Orleans series?
I'm going to say New Orleans.
Wow, I'm surprised with those great guys in the backcourt. How come?
I just think Anthony Davis, you trot out the best player every time in a series, even though you may not have, you took a major injury to Cousins and all that. I just think, he has a chance, to be dominant. And obviously the backcourt in Portland is terrific. So I wouldn't, obviously to me it's a toss-up, but I'm going to pick New Orleans.
All right, and you like OKC to beat Utah?
No, I like Utah.
You do?
I do.
All right, Utah.
I just think they're better. I just think they have a great defensive team. Donovan Mitchell's terrific. I think Joe Ingles is probably as underrated as any player in our league. I just think they're really good.
Right, and Utah's a slight favorite. The Pelicans are a solid underdog. Slight underdog for the Jazz. Solid underdog is Portland. All right, well, Golden State and Houston. If Golden State gets out of the first 2 rounds without bleeding, and Curry looks healthy, would you still and they don't have home court, would you still make them the underdog against the Rockets?
I would. I think Houston's going to win in 6 games.
Do you really? Wow. Yeah. Wow. And you think Toronto's going to come out of the East, huh?
I do. That first round against Washington, and I know, listen, Washington has been up and down, and Wall's been injured. You can forget how good they are. And I think they're going to be more engaged, more into it. I think it's a tough first-round series. I think Philly's got a tough first. In the East, I think all 4 series are going to be fascinating because I think you can make a case to your team if you're coaching them, legitimately, this is how we can win.
And so you think we're going to have some Game 7s, and you think OKC could be a Game 7, Portland could be a Game 7. It seems like you like the Wizards to extend. You think the Heat could be dangerous. You think we could have some Game 7s, which we usually don't get, Jeff. You think we can have some Game 7s in this first round, huh?
I do. I think even if they don't go to Game 7s, Chris, I think you're going to see some really hard-fought 5-game series, 6-game series, that aren't the walkovers that sometimes you get in the first round.
You do. All right, last thing. Who's your MVP? You vote for Harden or LeBron?
Harden.
Is it a no-brainer?
To me it is, but that's not to diminish the season James has or his reign as the best player in the league. I just think the one thing that gave me pause if I had a vote is that James played in every game. Harden missed 9. That's a big discrepancy in availability.
Wow.
But Harden, the way his team has played so dominantly throughout the whole year at both ends of the floor, I think it's his time. And I think it'll be well-deserved. All
right. 2 coaches were fired today. I hate to see it. Hornacek, to me, he had no chance. It's unfair for him. And Vogel not hired by the staff there in Orlando. Are you surprised by? He couldn't have been surprised by the Knicks. What's your take? Everybody says there's going to be 1 million coaching hires and changes. What's your take on the coaching front right now? And you're usually good with this. Your name's going to be linked. You also know that. What is your thought process on all these coaching availabilities here this offseason?
Well, just the 2 you mentioned, I think both coaches were thrust into incredibly difficult rebuilding situations, and both had to endure new managements coming in, and usually that does not bode well. Brett Brown is really one of the few guys that's been able to lose under a new management, and I give Philly a lot of credit because they stuck with Brett even though they didn't hire him. Brian Colangelo didn't, and it's turned out spectacularly well. So I think it's unfair to judge them on their record there, but this is not unusual. I would just say in general, not talking specifically about either Orlando or New York, when you are struggling as a team, Chris, or an organization in any sport, and the only thing or the biggest thing you change is a coach, you've changed nothing at all. The NBA is called a players' league for reasons. The teams that win have the best rosters. And you see it with the Knicks this year. They've been trying to find talent all year long, bringing in Trey Burke, helping him resurrect his career, trading for Moutier, giving Damian Dotson some minutes, their second-round pick. They're in search of talent. These teams, like Orlando, has some offensive talent, but they don't have like upper-level talent. New York needs more talent. You don't win in this league with great coaching and average players. You win with great players and great coaches.
Right, and right now those 2 teams didn't have it. All right, Houston and Toronto for Jeff, NBA Final. We'll watch all throughout, Jeff. Do a great job. Make me laugh in that booth. You always do. Make me laugh. That's important.
All right, take care.
Okay, very good. Mr. Van Gundy likes the Rockets. Excellent spot. 19 in front of the arrow. We continue.